The hotel lobby was bright and quiet in the early afternoon, and soft music moved through the air like a slow breath. Guests walked in and out carrying phones, bags, and tired smiles. The restaurant inside the hotel looked calm, with white tables, clean floors, and tall windows facing the street. It was a place known for class, comfort, and good service, and people believed anyone who entered would be treated with respect. Myra stepped inside slowly, with one hand resting on her belly. She was pregnant and close to her final months, and every movement needed care. Her face showed peace mixed with tiredness, and her eyes looked around the room as if searching for a safe corner. She wore simple clothes, nothing loud, nothing fancy, and her hair was tied back neatly. She did not come to show wealth or demand attention. She only wanted to sit, drink water, and eat something light. She chose a table near the window where sunlight touched the floor gently. Sitting down took effort, and she exhaled slowly once settled. Her thoughts drifted to the baby inside her, and she smiled faintly, imagining small hands and soft cries. For a moment she forgot the noise around her and felt calm. A waiter named Ron noticed her from across the room. He had been working there for 2 years and believed he understood people just by looking at them. He judged clothes, posture, and voice quickly, and often without thinking. He saw Myra sitting alone, dressed simply, and assumed she was not important. In his mind, important guests were loud, confident, and surrounded by others. Ron walked over with a practiced smile that did not reach his eyes. He asked for her order quickly. Myra looked up and politely asked for water and a light meal. Her voice was soft and steady. Ron nodded without warmth and turned away as if already bored. Time passed and the restaurant grew busier. Laughter rose from one table and quiet conversations flowed from another. Plates moved from kitchen to table and the sound of footsteps filled the room. Myra waited patiently, watching the street outside. She did not rush or complain. She trusted that the service would come. When Ron returned, he carried a glass filled almost to the edge. His walk was rushed and careless. As he reached the table, his hand slipped and the water spilled forward. It splashed onto the table and soaked into Myra's clothes. Cold water ran down her arms and onto the chair. She gasped softly and instinctively moved her hands to protect her belly. The sound of water drew attention. Nearby guests turned their heads. The room grew quiet for a second. Myra looked up at Ron in shock. Her eyes were wide, not angry but hurt and confused. She waited for an apology or concern. Ron laughed awkwardly and shrugged. He said accidents happen and that she should be careful next time. His tone was sharp and dismissive. He did not offer a napkin or ask if she was okay. He turned and walked away as if nothing important had happened. Myra sat frozen for a moment. Her heart beat fast and her skin felt cold. She felt eyes on her but no one spoke. Some looked away quickly, others watched without moving. The silence felt heavy. She took a breath and slowly reached for napkins on the table. Her hands shook slightly as she tried to dry herself. She focused on staying calm for the baby. Tears filled her eyes but she did not let them fall. She reminded herself to breathe. A woman at another table frowned and whispered to her partner. A man nearby shook his head quietly. Still no one stood up or said a word. The moment passed like a shadow and the noise of the restaurant slowly returned. Myra stood up carefully. The wet fabric clung to her legs, making movement harder. She adjusted her bag and looked around one last time. Her face showed quiet strength, not weakness. She did not ask for help or demand anything. She walked toward the exit step by step. Outside, the air felt cooler and fresher. She sat on a bench near the entrance and rested both hands on her belly. Her mind replayed the moment again and again. It was not the water that hurt the most but the lack of respect. She wondered how often such moments happened and went unnoticed. Inside the hotel, Ron continued working. He joked with another server and forgot about the incident. To him it was a small mistake already gone from his thoughts. He never imagined it mattered. Myra eventually stood up and went home. She changed into dry clothes and sat by the window watching the sky grow darker. She felt tired but calm. She believed in kindness and patience even when it was not returned. Later that evening her husband Sam called her. His voice was warm and steady. He asked how her day had been. Myra paused, then told him everything slowly and honestly. She did not raise her voice or exaggerate. She simply shared what happened and how it made her feel. Sam listened quietly. He did not interrupt. His face grew serious as he heard every word. He asked if she was safe and comfortable now. She said yes and smiled softly. Sam was not just a businessman. He was the owner of the hotel and many others across the country. He believed deeply in respect and fairness. Hearing what happened to Myra shook him not because of pride but because of responsibility. After the call, Sam stood in his office looking out at the city lights. He thought about the promises he made when building his hotels. He believed every guest deserved dignity no matter who they were. Somewhere else Ron finished his shift unaware of the truth. He did not know that his careless action had reached someone who would not forget it. The night moved forward quietly, carrying the beginning of a lesson that would soon change many lives. The next morning began quietly in the city as traffic rolled forward and shops opened their doors. Inside a tall office building, Sam sat at his desk staring at a large window that showed the skyline. His phone rested beside him, but his mind was still with the story Myra had shared the night before. He remembered her calm voice and the way she tried to protect peace even when treated unfairly. That memory stayed heavy in his chest. Sam was a man who believed that real power showed itself through responsibility. He had built his hotel empire slowly by listening to people and fixing problems before they grew large. He never liked shouting or public drama. Instead, he preferred to watch closely and act wisely. What happened to Myra felt like a crack in the values he worked so hard to protect. He called his assistant Lena and asked for a quiet meeting. Lena had worked with Sam for years and knew when something serious was happening. When she entered the room, she saw his expression and waited silently. Sam asked her to gather recent service reports from the hotel where Myra had visited. He also asked for staff schedules and guest feedback from the past month. Lena nodded without questions and left. Back at the hotel, Ron arrived for his shift feeling relaxed. He wore his uniform neatly and joked with co-workers as usual. He had no memory of the pregnant woman beyond a faint image that carried no meaning to him. To Ron, each day blended into the next, and he believed his job was safe because he followed basic rules. He never thought about kindness as part of service. The restaurant filled slowly with guests. Ron moved between tables with speed and confidence. He smiled at guests who looked wealthy and laughed at jokes made by regulars. His manager praised his energy and told him to keep things moving. Ron felt proud and important. Meanwhile, Lena reviewed reports and noticed patterns. There were a few comments about rude behavior in the restaurant. Most were small complaints, but together they painted a picture. Lena prepared a clear summary and sent it to Sam. Sam read every word carefully. He did not feel anger. He felt clarity. That afternoon, Sam decided to visit the hotel without announcing himself. He dressed simply and walked in like any other guest. No one recognized him. He sat in the restaurant observing quietly. He watched how guests were greeted and how problems were handled. He saw Ron laughing loudly at one table, then ignoring another guest who waited for service. Sam noticed the difference in behavior and his expression remained calm. He waited and watched. He wanted to understand, not judge quickly. A good leader saw the whole picture before acting. At another table, a young couple asked for help with an order mistake. Ron responded with impatience and blamed the kitchen. The couple looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Sam saw the same lack of care that Myra had felt. When Sam finished his meal, he asked to speak to the manager privately. The manager arrived quickly and greeted him politely without knowing who he was. Sam introduced himself calmly and the color drained from the manager's face. He apologized instantly, but Sam raised his hand gently. Sam said he was not there for apologies. He was there to understand. He asked about staff training and values. The manager explained procedures and promises. Sam listened and nodded, then shared what he had personally observed. The manager lowered his head, knowing the truth could not be hidden. Sam asked for Ron to be called into the office. Ron walked in confused, still smiling, thinking he was about to be praised. When he saw Sam, he froze. He recognized the face from magazines and news articles. His smile faded and his heart raced. Sam asked Ron simple questions about service and respect. Ron answered nervously, trying to sound confident. Then Sam described the incident with Myra without naming her. He spoke calmly and clearly. Ron realized what was happening. His face grew pale and his hands shook. Ron tried to explain and said it was an accident. Sam agreed that accidents happen but asked about the response afterward. He asked why there was no apology or care. Ron had no answer. Silence filled the room. Sam explained that service was not about plates or water. It was about dignity. He said every guest deserved kindness no matter how they looked or spoke. He explained that behavior reflected the heart of the hotel. Ron listened with tears in his eyes. The manager stood quietly understanding the weight of the lesson. Sam did not shout or threaten. He explained consequences and expectations. Ron was asked to step away from the floor and attend further training. He was also required to write a personal apology letter to the guest he had hurt. Ron left the office changed. Shame followed him but also understanding. For the first time he saw the impact of his actions. He remembered Myra's eyes and her quiet strength. That memory stayed with him as he went home early that day. That evening Sam returned home. Myra was resting on the couch with a book. He sat beside her and held her hand. He told her what he had done, not with pride but with honesty. Myra listened and smiled gently. She said she did not want anyone punished out of anger. She only wanted understanding to grow. Sam nodded and kissed her forehead. Outside the city lights flickered and the world moved forward. Inside their home peace returned slowly. And somewhere across the city Ron sat alone thinking deeply. The lesson had only begun and change was finally taking root. Days passed and the hotel moved forward with its usual rhythm, but something unseen had changed beneath the surface. Staff meetings felt different and voices were softer. New training sessions began and words like respect, care and responsibility were spoken often. The hotel still looked the same from the outside, but inside a quiet shift was taking place. Ron sat in a small training room with other staff members. He listened as trainers spoke about empathy and awareness. In the past he would have ignored such talks, but now every word reached him deeply. He remembered Myra sitting alone by the window and the way her eyes looked when the water spilled. That image stayed with him and would not leave. Each day Ron practiced slowing down. He greeted guests with real attention and listened before reacting. When mistakes happened, he apologized sincerely. Some guests noticed and smiled back. Others looked surprised. Slowly Ron began to understand that service was not a performance but a responsibility. Meanwhile Myra spent her days resting and preparing for the baby. She walked gently through her neighborhood and spoke softly to the life growing inside her. The incident at the hotel no longer hurt as much, but it had changed her view of the world. She believed kindness needed protection just like her child. Sam continued working quietly behind the scenes. He reviewed policies and encouraged managers to observe behavior closely. He wanted improvement, not fear. He reminded leaders that power existed to protect people, not control them. His message spread across the hotels he owned. One afternoon Sam invited Ron to a private meeting. Ron arrived nervous but determined. He bowed his head respectfully and waited. Sam asked him how training was going and Ron answered honestly. He spoke about shame and learning and the desire to do better. Sam listened carefully. Sam then told Ron about Myra. He revealed who she was and why the moment mattered. Ron felt his chest tighten. Realizing the woman he had treated poorly was carrying the child of the man before him filled him with regret. He apologized again with tears in his eyes, not because of fear but because of truth. Sam accepted the apology and said growth mattered more than guilt. He told Ron that mistakes could teach if people were willing to learn. Ron left the meeting feeling lighter yet committed to change. Weeks later Myra returned to the hotel. This time she came with Sam. She was hesitant but calm. Sam wanted her to see the changes with her own eyes. They entered the restaurant and chose a table near the same window. Ron noticed them immediately. His heart raced, but he took a deep breath and walked over slowly. He greeted them respectfully and offered water with steady hands. His voice was gentle and sincere. Myra looked up and recognized him. She saw the change in his eyes. Ron apologized quietly and directly. He said he was sorry for the pain he caused and thanked her for unknowingly teaching him an important lesson. Myra listened and nodded. She accepted the apology with grace. Her eyes softened and a weight lifted from the room. Other guests watched without knowing the story. The atmosphere felt warm and calm. Sam observed, silently proud not of power but of growth. After the meal, Myra smiled and said she felt at peace. She said she believed people could change when given the chance. Sam held her hand and agreed. That evening Ron finished his shift feeling different from before. He felt purpose in his work. He went home and called his mother. He told her about the lesson he learned and she listened with pride. The hotel continued to welcome guests and stories unfolded every day. But one moment stood as a reminder that small actions carried great weight. The city moved on, but kindness stayed where it was planted. And as Myra prepared for a new life, Ron prepared to become a better man. The journey was not over, but the path was now clear. The weeks that followed felt slower and fuller at the same time, as if life itself was taking a deep breath. The hotel continued to shine with its glass walls and soft lights, but now there was a stronger sense of care in the air. Guests were greeted with genuine smiles and staff spoke to each other with patience. The change did not come from fear but from understanding. Myra stayed mostly at home as her time grew closer. Each morning she sat near the window letting sunlight warm her face. She talked softly to her unborn child, telling stories about kindness and strength. The memory of the restaurant no longer felt heavy. Instead, it reminded her of how calm courage could create change. Sam balanced his work and his family with careful attention. He visited different hotels and spoke to teams not as an owner but as a listener. He asked simple questions and encouraged honesty. His presence made people reflect on how they treated others. He believed leadership meant being present, not distant. Ron continued working at the same hotel, but his role felt new. He moved with awareness and purpose. He noticed guests who sat quietly and made sure they were seen. He offered help before being asked. Each small act felt like a step toward becoming the person he wanted to be. One afternoon, an elderly woman dropped her bag near a table. Ron rushed over and helped her gather her things. She thanked him with a smile that stayed in his mind all day. He realized respect created moments that stayed longer than regret. The hotel staff noticed his change and followed his example. New workers learned from him and older ones adjusted their ways. The restaurant became a place where people felt safe and valued. Word spread quietly through reviews and conversations. Then one peaceful night, Myra went into labor. Sam stayed by her side, holding her hand as she breathed through each moment. Hours passed slowly and finally a soft cry filled the room. Their child arrived, healthy and calm. Myra held the baby close and felt a deep sense of peace. They named the child Noor, a name that meant light. Sam looked at Myra and smiled, knowing the name carried meaning beyond sound. Noor represented warmth, kindness, and the power of gentle strength. A few weeks later, Sam and Myra returned to the hotel once more. This time Myra carried Noor in her arms, wrapped in a soft blanket. The staff welcomed them with respect and quiet joy. Ron noticed them immediately and approached carefully. Myra introduced Noor with a smile. Ron looked at the baby with wonder and warmth. He congratulated them and thanked Myra again for her grace. Myra nodded and said she hoped Noor would grow in a world where kindness mattered. Sam placed a hand on Ron's shoulder and thanked him for choosing growth. Ron felt proud, not because of approval but because he had changed himself. They sat at the same table near the window. Sunlight streamed in and the city moved below. The moment felt complete. After they left, Ron returned to work with renewed purpose. He understood that lessons came in unexpected ways and that respect was a choice made daily. The story of that day never became a headline. It did not need to. Its impact lived quietly in changed behavior and open hearts. Life continued forward, carrying light where there was once shadow. And in the simple acts of kindness, the true meaning of power was revealed.